Welcome to Backwards Incompatible, the video game retrospective podcast where we say lots of words and sometimes in the right order. My name's Garrett.
My name's Chase.
And my name's Justin.
Boy howdy, has it been a little bit. How have you guys been?
I've been doing pretty well. I just finished reading this really cool horror novel by Alma Katsu, I think her name is. It's called The Hunger.
What's it about?
So essentially, it's a historical fiction. It's about the Donner Party. You guys know the Donner Party, right?
Mm-mm.
No.
I'm uneducated swine.
Yeah.
Oh, pick up a history book. So the Donner Party, they were a group of pioneer settlers in the 1840s. They were part of the Oregon Trail, that type of era. They were a large wagon train of people who set out west to California. Unfortunately, due to a mixture of bad luck, incompetent leadership, and just a lot of bad, poorly thought out decisions, they ended up getting snowed in the mountains during winter. They were forced to resort to cannibalism in order to survive through the winter.
The hills have eyes.
And The Hunger is a supernatural take on that historical event, in that there's creatures hunting the party on their way west. Cannibalistic demon sort of thing. It's a really good book. I highly recommend it. Solid read. The Hunger, Alma Katsu. Check it out.
I, myself, can't read.
He went to public school.
What are words?
What about you guys? What have you two been up to lately?
Well, I mean, things have been going pretty well for me. I recently got a new job. Yay me.
Now you won't have to resort to cannibalism.
Yay! I don't like eating my friends.
I do.
Unless they piss you off. Yeah, I've been busy traveling and visiting family and doing work, just hospital work. That's pretty much it.
Look at this loser. He hangs out with his family.
Damn, you didn't have to call me out like that.
This summer heat, though, it's only May, and yet this has been a real scorcher of a season so far. It is really dry out in Michigan.
Yeah, and plus it's been like 85 degrees all day.
It was 104 degrees over here yesterday.
It is ridiculous for it to be that hot, especially this early on in this year.
Fortunately, mosquitoes haven't been too much of an issue, but then again, I haven't really been going outside a lot.
I think that's because of the low humidity.
Yeah, but bees and wasps, on the other hand, those have been such a nuisance.
I like bumblebees. I like them just run into everything.
Oh, bumblebees are fine. I'm talking about the assholes, the geese of the insect world, wasps.
Mm-hmm.
I saw a big one this morning. This, like, huge wasp-looking thing. It looked like, I think it was, like, two wasps stuck together, because I think that's a thing that happens. And it just flew, like, 2 feet from my face. And I'm just like, what the fuck was that thing?
It's the Umbrella Academy coming to get you, Chase.
No, it's the Flood. It's the latest Flood monster.
No!
Actually, if anything, it was something out of Starship Troopers.
I haven't seen that in forever.
Would you like to know more?
I don't think I've even watched it or even done anything with that name, Starship Troopers. What's it about?
I mean, it's basically like Halo. It's Marines in the future. It's based off a book of humanity is at war with a race of giant bugs, and the movie follows a group of soldiers fighting against the bugs. It's a bit of a cult classic. Kind of cheesy here and there, but that's what makes it fun. I think Halo itself does reference it a few times.
Yeah.
Neil Patrick Harris was in it too. He dressed as a Nazi at the end of it. That was a thing that happened.
Different times.
Yeah, that's where the whole I'm from Buenos Aires and I say kill 'em all comes from.
I watched that movie at a bit of a young age, so it kind of scared me when I was a lot younger.
Yeah, I remember my parents were watching it on TV one night when I was really young, and I walked in on that, and I think it was the scene where a group of soldiers just get melted by acid spewed by that giant beetle bug, and that just, like, scarred me.
Mm-hmm.
But it is fitting that we are... But that it... fuck. I can't do this.
But yes, we do things.
Speaking about fighting invasions out in space, Halo 3.
That's right, Halo 3, released on September 25th, 2007 for the Xbox 360. Developed by our favorite studio, Bungie, and published by Microsoft. Man, imagine the journey they took together all the way for this.
Apparently, they were dissatisfied with the development process of Halo 2. They thought Halo 2 was a little rushed for them. They felt like they could have done Halo 2 better in hindsight. For a lot of Bungie developers, Halo 3 felt like, okay, this time we're gonna get it right this time. I mean, personally, I thought Halo 2 was a pretty solid game, but, you know, creator's bias and all that.
Yeah.
Besides the Jackal snipers. Every time, trauma from those guys coming down the alleyway.
It was was revenge for how OP the pistol was in Halo Combat Evolved.
Probably.
Speaking of Halo 2, we kind of forgot to mention this in our Halo 2 episode, but skulls were introduced in Halo 2, but we might as well talk about them here. So skulls were a game mechanic that in each level there was a skull that you could find and pick up, and once you unlocked it, you could turn it on for that level. Not like a Easter egg per se, but it would change the gameplay. It would be like every time you headshot a grunt, confetti and hoorays would come out. It would change how gravity affected enemies, how powerful enemies would be compared to you, that kind of thing. It would tweak the gameplay slightly. Adds a bit more of a challenge.
Also could keep the replays fresh.
Right. I personally don't really use skulls outside of like the, I guess, purely visual ones, like the aforementioned grunt one, just because that one's funny.
Honestly, the same.
It increases your aim so much. I think you said that, Justin, while we were playing it. You said that it makes us focus.
Well, what I said was that, like, if that was just a staple in games where, like, enemies' heads explode in confetti and a celebratory yay, we would probably all be better at headshotting because we'd be paying so much more attention trying to get that headshot.
I like to imagine that's just how grunt biology is. They're just having a funeral for their grunt grandma, and the moment she passes, yay!
I love that.
Where do we even begin with this one? It's the thrilling, quote-unquote, conclusion to the Halo trilogy.
Pretty much, I guess,
Trilogy.
this storyline, which was focused around the Flood.
Well, it was also, as far as Bungie was concerned, the conclusion to the Master Chief saga, because the last Halo game Bungie did, Reach, was a prequel that Chief didn't appear in. So, as far as Bungie was concerned, Master Chief's story ended here.
Mm-hmm.
This was one of the biggest games of 2007. I remember the hype for this game was everywhere.
I remember seeing it on like Adult Swim when I would stay up late.
Yep, same here.
And I loved the commercials that came out. To me, they were always the ones that made you hype and want to buy it. That was the very first M-rated game that I've actually ever played and completed.
I wasn't allowed to play it.
And I was a dirty PS3 kid, so I couldn't play it either, but I always thought, damn, Halo 3 looks cool.
It was definitely, like you said, a thriller. One that really raised the setting limits for FPS shooter games.
I do feel like Halo 3 and, to an extent, Halo Reach, they were kind of a passing of the torch for FPS games, because I feel like after Halo 3, I think the big FPS was Call of Duty afterwards. I feel like that kind of took up the mantle for the multiplayer FPS game that everyone was into.
With Modern Warfare and Modern Warfare 2 coming out, Black Ops, that sort of stuff.
Halo Reach definitely continued on Halo's legacy to some capacity, but by that point, I think COD was very much the FPS game. So Halo 3 was very much a conclusion to Halo's time in the sun, I guess you could say. Not that the series completely faded, like the game still sold very well for the next several entries, but we'll get to the legacy of Halo later on. Going back to marketing though, Microsoft really went all in on Halo 3's marketing. They released a Halo Edition Zune, for God's sake. That's how you know they have faith in it.
Did people actually ever buy the Zune, really?
We're not dissing you if you did buy the Zune, by the way.
No, not at all. It's just like, a lot of people don't know what the Zune is, well, at least from our generation.
Justin's coordinates are 40-5022.
No doxing me.
Joke's on you, I already know where I live.
Darn, I guess the satellite that's right on your house has nothing to say about it.
It's like that scene in Akira. Justin just looks around with all these lasers on him and he's like, what's this light? Boom. This was also apparently the first video game to have its own sponsored Mountain Dew tie-in, so it was the start of a gamer tradition.
Ah, yes, the gamer fuel.
Gamer fuel, Mountain Dew.
Mountain Dew and Doritos.
Everyone coming out with like G Fuel and Bang. Well, guess what? Mountain Dew is where it's at.
Yeah, I feel like the stereotypical gamer drink has shifted over, like you said, more to G Fuel or Monster these days, but I will always think of Mountain Dew as the gamer-fueled beverage of choice.
Mountain Dew, Doritos, sunglasses, Thug Life, air horn. There you go.
Well, it's all in that energy boost. Mountain Dew, while it is the most sugary soda, it just can't compete with actual energy drinks like Monster or G Fuel or all that.
Not to mention all that stuff has all that extra branding towards gaming now, too.
Right, like Apex has a huge sponsorship with Monster, I think, right? It is Monster, right? That Apex has the deal with?
I've seen Call of Duty tied with Monster, too.
I don't know. I don't drink energy drinks. I have only tried one Monster in all my life, and I really hated the taste. It tasted like battery acid, and I've never gone back.
You don't like the taste of battery acid?
Why not try the Java one? Because the Java one's pretty good.
Yeah, I guess I'm just worried that if I try the Java one, I'm going to like it too much and become addicted to it, and I just don't want to go down that path. Java Monster, not even once.
And as for me being the caffeine addict here, I'm just going to step away.
There wasn't really a whole lot of gameplay changes for Halo 3 compared to 2. It was mostly just refining on what Halo 2 already introduced, although there were a few additions. Halo 3 introduced deployable equipment such as the auto turret or the bubble shield, etc., that kind of stuff.
There's a regeneration one too, I believe.
To be honest, when we were playing it together in co-op mode for this episode, I kept forgetting to deploy those. I just forgot I even had those.
I was never one to really use them. When we were playing together, I only used them simply because I kept on instinctively pressing shift to sprint.
Yeah, believe it or not, I didn't use any sort of deployable stuff, even though if I just threw a deployable cover down, we probably could have survived.
I mean, the moment one of us got a gravity hammer, back away from that guy. He is going whole hog on the Covenant. Oh yeah, the gravity hammer. So, very much like the energy sword was introduced in 1 but was unusable by the player, the gravity hammer was in 2 by the brutes, but I don't think you could equip it in 2. It wasn't a usable weapon.
I don't believe so.
No, I don't think so.
I feel like I would have known.
But it is in 3, and using the gravity hammer is so fun. Just stupid grunt, you go squish now.
I love ragdoll physics, man.
Just send all your enemies flying into the stratosphere.
Landing it on a brute, the sound it makes, that boom noise, just
Everything about it is satisfying.
Halo 3 also introduced the beloved Forge mode, where you could make your own Halo map.
Yeah, so I really enjoyed that they kind of wanted to be, hey, community, how about you help us make this game better? You know, in terms of creating maps and creating stronger fandom behind this game. So
I always appreciate it when games include a map editor of some type. It's really not that common anymore. I feel like very few games still have this, but I know Valve was very gung-ho on it with the Hammer editor for the Source engine. But when I was a kid, I loved map editing. That was one of my favorite fascinations of game development. I would try to watch as much behind the scenes for map making and level making as I could. As I've gotten older, I've dabbled a little bit. I've made various Source engine mods for Team Fortress 2. I've dabbled in other map editing programs. I don't know what it is about level editing and map making. I just feel like it's one of those things that isn't necessarily overlooked per se. I feel like level design tends to get a lot of attention when it's very well made and well thought out, but I feel like for a lot of games, the space you're playing on, people just don't really appreciate it. Like how much attention to detail was made. Why does this space look the way it does? The creative decisions behind that, bringing concept art vision to life. I just feel like it's a part of game development process that is deserving of more attention than it gets.
That's what I love about going into like brand new games, is just going in and looking at things. I'll spend a lot of time just staring at the intricate designs that they'll put on like walls in some games, how they put it all together.
And since we're speaking about art and all that, have any of you seen about concept art like that was developed during Halo 3's production?
I've seen a few for the Flood and for the Gravemind left over from Halo 2, and it's pretty cool looking.
It's definitely one of those that you, the listener, should take a look into, and that goes for you too. I really enjoy concept art just because sometimes it's nice to see how much a level was originally conceived to what it is now, and just thinking about all the planning that probably went behind it to go to that point. And I feel it brings how we kind of see video games, we see polygons and stuff like that, but when we see that concept art, it's like, oh, if this was real life, this is how it would pretty much look here.
It's funny you mention that, Garrett, because there was an entire chapter that was planned for this game, but was ultimately cut, the Guardian Forest level. While little of the actual level has been found, it is confirmed to exist within the game's files, and a lot of information of what was planned for it has been revealed to the public. It would have had a really cool aerial battle with the Hornet. There would have been a new Forerunner enemy, the Guardian Sentinel. Bit of a shame it had to be cut. I feel like that would have been a really cool chapter to play through.
Do we know why it was cut? Was it like budget restraints or like technology at the time?
I'm trying to remember exactly why. I think it might have been timing. Like, they couldn't have gotten the level done in time for the game's release without a delay. And I feel like back then, games weren't really expected to be delayed too frequently, so they probably didn't want to risk it. It might have been development issues for the level in particular, but a lot of what the Guardian Forest chapter would have contained did get moved over to other chapters, so it wasn't a total waste.
But that would suck so much, being like one of the main creators or something like that, just for it to not be able to be used, so all your hard work is just pretty much gone.
Yeah, that's a shame. I mean, as we're recording this, the writer's strike in Hollywood is still ongoing, so our hearts go out to creatives everywhere who are getting fucked over by executives in just unfortunate circumstances. I think I speak for the three of us when I say we're all in agreement that people who make art, they deserve to be paid for their work and deserve way more than what they've been given by the industry at large.
Yeah, why do something professionally that it's going to be made money off of it if you're not going to see anything from that? At that point, I'm just going to release it to free for myself.
I always just think of like all the TV shows that were canceled, even shows that were pitched but never made, went into production but were never fully greenlit or aired to the public. And I just think for someone, that was a dream. That was a creative vision they were having. Even in video games, how many games out there were announced but ultimately never made, or games that just never got the budget or funding that they deserved? Yeah, it's just a shame. Well, that's a sour note to go on. Garrett, how about you guide us into some fun facts about Halo 3 while we're here?
Well, I got nothing in terms of the story, but I think we should go to it because there's a lot of fun little things that we found in the levels.
Halo 3, like I said, it is the third and, at the time, final part of Halo. Picking up shortly after the events of Halo 2, there was actually a prequel comic called Halo Uprising that was released before the game that shows what happened with Chief right after. Would you say he left Cortana, or rather Cortana forced him to leave off of High Charity at the end of Halo 2?
I would say kind of forced, just because she's like, yo, I'm going to stay behind, do a manual detonation, my guy. You go ahead.
Right. I mean, he did promise to come back for her. Don't make a girl a promise and all that. And that's really the name of the game for Halo 3.
Yeah.
It's all about the relationship between Chief and Cortana.
Yeah, because Halo's, not Halo. Master Chief's always been had like a strong connection with Cortana, and so it's like, I don't see him just like being like, yep, see ya, I'm out of here.
I feel like this game is really emphasizing that connection, because throughout the game, Chief is being plagued by visions of Cortana, and you get the sense that he feels like he has to save her from the grave mind. He has to bring her home. Obviously, he feels bad for abandoning her, even though, as we discussed, that's not really what happened, but, you know, it weighs on his consciousness.
I mean, she is in the clutches of the grave mind when last we saw her.
And she's becoming increasingly corrupted as the game goes on.
Yeah, and it's like, though you have this entire, like, plot of, like, what's going on for his military duty, of course he has that duty to do his job, but you can't help but feel like the main goal and story of this is him going to save her.
Master Chief still has, like, a part of Cortana in him, so while you're progressing through the game, you are given visions of Cortana, and really the developers wanted you to be reminded of who you're doing this for, who you're going to save, while also fighting off the Covenant in order to save basically lives, because they were going to shoot up all the rings using the Ark, which we'll get into later.
Chief has a poster at his office that's covered in photos of Cortana that says, "Do it for her."
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting little bit tidbit there.
It's not just about Chief and Cortana, however. It's everything that the series has been leading up to. The Flood are on the verge of victory. The Covenant are about to activate all the Halo rings in the Great Journey, as the Prophet of Truth puts it. Speaking of Prophet of Truth, he is now voiced by Terrence Stamp, same guy who played General Zod in the classic Superman movies. I also think Miranda Keyes switched voice actresses as well. She's now voiced by Justice Bolding instead of Julie Benz. There's a lot of great voice actors involved in this. Ron Perlman voices Admiral Hood. Keith David returns as Arbiter, and once again, he is doing a phenomenal job.
Oh, Keith David. That's one name I cannot get over. His entire presence as Arbiter is It feels so stoic still, and I probably mentioned this before, but he has that warrior voice.
Oh yeah. Arbiter in this game, he has come a long way since Halo 2. Halo 2, he was very unsure about everything. He was questioning everything for the first time in his life, everything about the Covenant and the Prophets. And by the end of it, he's definitely come around and warmed up to humanity, although that's more of a fire-forged alliance, if anything. But I feel like in this game, him and Chief, they very much respect each other. Not necessarily, I wouldn't call it a rivalry per se.
They become brothers in arms.
Yeah, brothers in arms, that's a term. Although, in the beginning of the game, when Chief wakes up after crash landing into Earth, he sees Arbiter for the first time and just rushes up and puts a pistol under him before Johnson's like, wait, Chief, he's on our side. And I'm just like, it's a damn good thing Chief has trigger discipline. Imagine if he just wasted Arbiter right then and there at the very beginning.
Damn it, Chief! Why do you have to cook?
Were it so easy. Speaking of that opening cutscene, Chief's armor, his arm comes into frame exactly 1 minute and 17 seconds into the opening cutscene.
Yeah, so this red versus blue Easter egg happens on the second level, and pretty much when you're heading toward the hangar, you get into this little tunnel. Well, if you go toward the end of the tunnel, instead of going down the door that you're supposed to, you'll see a soldier who's talking, who's talking just outside, and I believe it changes voice actors for each difficulty, but the one that we saw, I think, was it Tucker and Doc?
Yeah, because we were playing on normal.
It was probably the best interaction, and it brought me back to seeing Red vs. Blue on YouTube.
Right, so they actually got Rooster Teeth voice actors to voice, depending on the difficulty, Tucker and Doc, Griffin Simmons, or Church and Caboose. And I think that's just a really awesome Easter egg. Listening in on the funny banter between the soldier trying to get in through the door. Like you said, Garrett, it takes me back to watching Red vs. Blue, which, as someone who always was a PlayStation kid and never got to play Halo until relatively recently, Red vs. Blue was my main exposure to the Halo franchise for the longest time.
Speaking of another fun little fact, we're going to backtrack a little bit to the first one. There was cavemen who were kind of like sneaking in, kind of like watching you just walk on by while you fight some Covenant.
Yeah, there's a couple of cavemen props hidden in a cave in the first chapter of the game. Ooga boonga, they're just sitting there, just having a good time. They're just chilling.
They're witnessing you barbecuing the Covenant front lines.
If you turn the rare dialogue skull on, there's a lot of funny lines. Like, I think if you kill a brute next to another brute, he'll say, like, he was my brother. Or did he say brother or lover? Either way.
Probably said brother.
I respect it.
I want to believe lover, though.
Yeah, that sounds so much better.
He was my lover.
Grunts will be like, it was all the brute's idea, don't kill me.
I love grunts.
I'm gonna spread a little bit of a thought plague to you guys, and by extension all you listeners. In the Halo universe, there's gotta be humans that are Covenant fetishists, right?
Oh,
like,
yes.
If you go on the internet in the Halo world, there's gotta be people that are like into Covenant, I guess, bedroom play. Like, there are people dressing up as elites or grunts, and they are just having a good time with each other, right? That's gotta be a thing.
Massive orgies.
If it's there, there's a Rule 34 for it.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah, but like in the Halo universe, Covenant are real. Like, would that be the Halo equivalent of like furries or something? Because
well, no, I don't think so. I think it would be speciality or something like that.
Xeno something?
Xenophilia?
The elites have now made an alliance with humanity. I don't know how much civilian interaction they get or if they're just sticking to the military and government, but imagine if there's an elite dating like a human. I want to know how that relationship is working.
That gets into some very interesting areas of like, does it really matter when it's like, I don't know. It's like when it comes to like the idea of like they're sentient creatures, how does that play into our respect of that kind of thing?
Right. Well, I mean, they are sentient and everything, so it's not like, it's not bestiality. They are sentient. They can communicate, but it's at the same time, there's a lot of, the Covenant have been genociding humanity for like the last 20 years. They're responsible for so much death and destruction. It's the equivalent of like people who have like a Nazi kink or whatever, like people will dress up.
That's the issue with organ compatibility.
Now I'm just picturing like a person making out with an elite and their tendrils just wrapping around the person's cheeks and just, hey, if it works, it works.
Let's just say Thanksgiving and Christmas dinners will be kind of tense.
Yeah. How could you bring that thing into our house?
Hey mom, here's my boyfriend. Walk, 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 walk.
I have one thing to say to you.
Oh no, Chief's gonna get canceled on Covenant Twitter.
Pissing on the moon?
Prophet of truth, I've come to make an announcement. Master Chief is a bitch-ass motherfucker.
He pissed on the ring.
How do you like that, Admiral Keyes, you idiot? I activated the rings!
Okay.
Humanity's military has been reduced to just a few holdouts. The only chapters here on Earth are in Kenya, which is one of the last few strongholds of Earth. Kind of, thematically fitting, given that I think Kenya is where humanity began. Like, if you go back the evolutionary line, the first humans were found in what is modern-day Kenya. I think that's true.
Yeah, I know it was in Eastern Africa where we found, like, at least for Homo sapiens.
I'm not super, knowledgeable about that area, so I don't really know.
Somewhere in East Africa. It's also where the portal to the Ark is hidden underground.
So, yeah, you're fighting the Covenant and the Flood, and will you eventually learn about the Ark? This Ark is basically like the control center for all the other Halo installments. But anyways, I'm not getting into the nitty-gritty details. Just basically, we're going there to stop them, and a lot of things happen.
So are we at the point where we first start running into the Flood in the game then? Wasn't it a cutscene right after we finished fighting one of those first spider robots?
Yeah, scarabs.
We go into this massive battle against, fighting this scarab, and then it goes in that cutscene. I love that cutscene, too. You can just feel, how horrible a thing this is, seeing this massive, infected Covenant ship fly in and crash into one of the cities.
And you just know, oh shit, the Flood, they're here.
We are at one of the most critical points where we could win or lose absolutely everything.
And not only that, this game introduces the pure form Flood. These aren't your normal zombie parasite Flood that are Covenant or humans taken over. No. These are Flood that are wholly original. They are disgusting. What texture? What do Flood feel like? I imagine they feel very fungal-like.
I always figured slimy, like a slug.
I'd think of them being kind of squishy. Yeah, just kind of squishy.
Either way, I wouldn't want to touch a Flood.
No, it grosses me out.
But yeah, the pure form Flood, I got some major Half-Life vibes from a couple of these pure form Flood, like the ones that look like weird tentacle dog things. That felt like something out of Half-Life. Don't know if that's intentional or not, or that's just fresh on our mind given our recent playthroughs, but...
Oh yeah, and then not to mention a bit of the Resident Evil feel that we talked about it having too.
Either way, the Flood, they are scary, and I really like how they've been redesigned for the new 360 graphic quality. The little weird flower plant tentacles that stick out of their mouth. That one cutscene where they briefly team up with Chief and Arbiter to take down Truth, and the Gravemind uses Flood to communicate. The way those things move in their mouths, I was very discomforted. That just made my skin crawl.
Even with humans, I know there's this one model where the Flood's cutting out and the whole head is shoved off to the side.
This archetype of an alien race has been done in other sci-fi before. You have the Zerg from StarCraft, you have the Tyranids from Warhammer 40k, and the Flood are very much of that ilk. They are the unstoppable Flood of parasitic zombie hive mind race that you can't negotiate with. There is the Gravemind, and the Gravemind is sentient, but it is very clearly not thinking on the same wavelength as humans or even...
It's ambitious.
Did you ever take time to go up to some of the dead corpses of some of the infected people and just kind of look at how gross it is and how they've taken over everything? But then you see bits of them where it's I know what that is. I know which Covenant race that is, but it barely resembles it anymore.
Consume.
Yeah, it's kind of the idea of take over everything. Must assimilate.
There is one quote that I had from the Gravemind. It's, "Now the gate has been unlatched. Headstones pushed aside. Corpses shift and offer room. A fate you must abide. 'Cause this is Thriller Night." That was the thing that popped in my head.
Perfect. I can't wait to have Gravemind start doing the moonwalk. By the way, speaking about the Flood and who they infect, I don't know if y'all knew about this, but there's a story about you remember Jenkins, the one who video recorded back in Combat Evolved?
Yeah, the recording you found.
Apparently with the Flood, he was still sentient in there, but he was his consciousness was suppressed, and it just makes you wonder was he just a special case, or is that with everybody? Because if it's with everybody, can you imagine always having that involuntary movement of your body while you're just basically a stranger in your own body? And
you're forced to watch your body murder everyone around you. I'm pretty sure, speaking of Half-Life, that's how headcrab zombies work. People that are infected by headcrabs in Half-Life are very much still aware of what's going on, and you can hear them screaming, "Help me" or "Kill me."
Yeah, and I mean, it's like that idea too, outside of the psychological part of like not being in control of your actions, but just the fact that you're feeling this flood creature take over your body. Like, how excruciatingly painful is that? Or do they kind of shut off the pain receptors?
No, I don't think so. I think since it's still like a separate being, I don't think they cut off the pain receptors for the host, but they do enough to keep the host alive.
Yes, because I mean, eventually, like, people can die if they experience too much pain. They go into shock.
This is something I always think about with zombies is, are people still alive? Like, I think in The Last of Us, that one kid, Sam, he brings this up when he talks to Ellie in that one scene.
I know with runners, which are more recently infected, they will tell you to stop or help them. They still have their kind of conscious, but I believe they lose that eventually, like after a year, like when they're like a clicker.
I mean, you could consider it a mercy killing, if anything.
It's so sad to see your fellow Marines and just like mechanic guys just kind of like become floods right in front of your eyes, and all you can do is just kill them before they become a flood.
And then there's also the fact of like you'll just see corpses laying around, because I think they even use corpses. I remember like corpses kind of come back to life with the flood. So it's like,
yeah, I think at least in Halo 2 that was a mechanic where I definitely remember seeing like dead Covenant get infected and rise back up.
I think I saw that when we were playing Halo 3 too. Them coming back to life, and it's just like, oh my god.
Yeah, it did happen. Make sure to blow up the bodies, kind of. I think if you shot the head enough, and then the whole body would explode.
We seem to have lost the plot. I think we left off with the Covenant breaking into Earth's military headquarters.
No, we're still at the flood.
We're at like after the flood like hit the city and stuff like that, or invasion of Earth.
Right, sorry. I was just thinking back to that really infamous Miranda line. Our reinforcements are here. Where should they go? And Miranda Keys is like, to war, cocks pistol. And yeah, it's a badass line, but it's one of those things where, what do I tell the reinforcements, though?
Where is this war that I must send them to?
That's not an answer.
That is definitely something that boosts morale right there.
Yeah, and it's like a bit of a badass line too.
It's a cool quote, don't get me wrong, but so the elite fleet that has aligned with humans, they just glass East Africa in order to stop the flood from spreading. The shipmaster of the elite fleet, he just outright says he would have destroyed all of Earth if Arbiter hadn't talked him out of it. You do understand why. We've seen how bad the flood can get if they're not stopped, but considering I think Earth is the only planet humans still control, yeah, that would have been very detrimental. Speaking of the shipmaster, he too has another badass line. When they arrive at the Ark and Truth's fleet is already there, the shipmaster just says, "So it is an even fight." This is why the elites are my favorite Covenant race. They are the warriors. Brutes are, well, the barbarian, brutish type. Elites are, I guess you could call them the honorable warriors.
Their culture is awesome.
Yeah, they're like the samurai to the brutes barbarian, I guess you could say.
They seem to align the most with like how humans are when it comes to like how we are as people.
Right. Prophet of Truth does outright say that the elites were always the most suspicious of all the other Covenant forces in the Prophet's motives, so they were definitely much more individual thinking, at the very least. They're also one of my favorite designs of the Covenant races. I'm pretty sure I've talked about this before, but I just really like the sleek alien, but also still humanoid look of elites. They just have a really cool, distinctive silhouette. Couple that with, you look at an elite with the energy sword, and I'm like, yep, that's Halo Alien right there.
Yep. Moving on. So, Fun Miranda Keys says to war. Well, our war is on the Ark that we have followed the Covenant to.
And guess who's back? 343 Guilty Spark makes his return.
That bastard.
Remember him from the Combat Evolved guys?
I wouldn't say I distrust him per se in the sense that he's always plotting betrayal. No, I don't think he's capable of that. I think he genuinely means what he means in the moment. It's just more so that when he realizes that Johnson and Chief plan to destroy destroy the Ark and all the rings, he just goes completely insane and kills Johnson.
Just part of his programming for the most part.
I mean, they were going to fire the ring, and he was totally fine with that, but they wanted to fire it right then. And
I guess what I'm trying to say is I distrust him because I know, okay, this guy will do whatever his programming says. He's unreliable. It's not like he was planning to betray everyone. It's just more so this guy is going to turn on us the moment it becomes convenient for him.
He's probably not true AI. He's just, again, more not a sentient AI, but just rooted to his base programming in the end.
Right. Yeah. I think I've heard of this somewhere, and like there's a theory that the bots like 343 are actually forerunners that had their consciousness moved over.
I mean, I guess that's possible, but he does refer to humans as reclaimers or like children of his creators. Like he specifically refers to forerunners as his creators. That could just be how they're programmed to talk about forerunners, but I don't know. I feel like if there was an actual forerunner, they wouldn't be quite so distant or disconnected from how they refer to them.
Basically, the precursors, which are like these super ancient aliens, they had a lot of knowledge and power. They had like successors, which I think they had something like the mantle, something that represented that they were favored by them. Well, it used to be the Forerunners, but then it switched to the humans, ancient humans. And really with the Forerunners, they were pissed off about this. So they went on a killing spree to the precursors. And these precursors are actually like the ones that escaped this genocide and the ones that have been out drifting into space. They eventually aged so much to the point to where they became the Flood themselves. So if you think about it, it's just kind of like the precursors getting their revenge on everything.
In a roundabout way, yeah. That's a cool bit of lore.
Thought that could like spice it up a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, Halo 3 did introduce, I'm pretty sure this introduced the terminals that can be found throughout the game, which do go into backstory and lore dumps of the series.
Halo 2, I think, did some of that too.
Did it, or was that just in the Master Chief version? I don't know if the original Halo 2 had terminals, but I could be wrong on that.
Like, I didn't play the original version, so I can't really say, I guess. But I know Master Chief, like you said.
Yeah, I think in the Master Chief collection, they did add terminals to Halo 1 and 2. I do remember playing Combat Evolved and finding terminals, which were kind of spoilery in hindsight because they kind of reveal more stuff about Guilty Spark in Combat Evolved before the end of the game. So I'm like, oh, okay, I know instantly not to trust this little doodad looking light thing. But killing Guilty Spark, it's not really a boss fight. I mean, would you qualify that as a boss fight? I mean, I guess it technically is, but...
Personally, yes.
It was extremely easy, though.
Because we had 3 people, though.
Well, that's fair.
True, but it's more of an excuse to just have Chief or the Arbiter just unload their weapons onto Guilty Spark. Finally put that annoying little betrayer down.
Just stomp on it as hard as you can.
But he did not go down without taking one of our best friends.
Johnson. He just vaporizes Johnson in the back, and gotta give it to Johnson's voice actor. That scream of pain was really,
It was really well done.
I think they told him to step on the Lego.
Probably. It is cool that boss fight against Guilty Spark. He takes visible battle damage as it goes on. He starts chipping apart and breaking down, and his voice becomes more and more distorted. I always appreciate that kind of visible damage being taken on in a boss. Little did Master Chief know, by striking 343 down, it would become even more powerful than we could ever imagine.
Obi-Wan?
Yeah, can't wait to see that.
Let's just say 343 will continue to harass Chief from here on out.
All right. So, during the arc, when we were taking down the shield generators and all that, we then learned that Sergeant Johnson was, like, MIA, and we learned that the Covenant has taken him. Well, they kind of took him to the control center. As we're kind of getting over to the control center to save Johnson, someone gets there before us, and that is Miranda Keyes. Miranda swoops in with a pelican, and to be honest, I found it quite funny when she knocked off that brute. Like, it was like a little pinball machine. Boop. He's off.
You really gotta hand it to Keyes. She is not a behind-the-desk type of officer. She is very firmly a boots-on-the-ground type of soldier.
She's not someone you want to mess with.
Exactly.
Sadly, she gets messed with because she was distracted by her own sort of hesitation.
Because the Covenant need humans to activate the Ark, Johnson was trying to get the brute to kill him. So Johnson's like, okay, Keyes, We'll kill each other. This is a murder-suicide pact. But yeah, unfortunately, Keyes hesitates, and that gives, I think Truth is the one that stabs her in the back.
Yeah, well, Truth shoots her in the back, and bye-bye Keys. It's just so sad. I mean, I felt like she could have had a little bit more of fun action. I wanted to see more from Keys, but really, I felt like she did more than her father in terms of action.
I mean, Keyes was definitely pretty cool. It is a bit of a shame we didn't get to see more of her in action. Or, I mean, I guess Johnson got his share in Halo 2. He does assist Arbiter in the final boss fight against the Brute, so he had his moments. Seeing Truth get out of his hover chair and actually walk is kind of funny. I just thought of that one scene in WALL-E when the captain gets up for the first time and walks, and that's what came to my mind.
Yeah, what happened to me is like when I first ever saw that. Wait, these guys have legs? They can walk?
Yeah, like really old men looking things. Yeah, the great journey. And they kind of got the saggy ears too.
They're very much these Darth Sidious kind of guys where they look like very disheveled, old, feeble men, but no, they're fully capable of killing people if need be. Granted, Keyes was distracted.
Apparently there's an elite group in the Covenant that's made from the same species as the Prophets, and apparently they are sometimes on par or even better than some of the elite.
The like gold armor elites or something like that?
Yeah, something like that. Like they're like better than them, or at least same level.
No, they bought the battle pass, so they got the gold armor. All the other elites are free to play, so they just get the default.
They got enough RP.
Yeah.
But then Chief and Arbiter show up to stop Truth. I was going to say rescue Johnson and Keyes, but they're kind of late for Keyes. But they show up to stop Truth from activating the Ark. And the Flood show up, and Gravemind temporarily makes an alliance with them because if the Ark is activated, everyone loses. It is game over, man. Game over. So this is the three sides coming together. Covenant, humans, and Flood to stop a theocratic madman from destroying everything.
To think that there would be something worse than the Flood.
A religious zealot.
Anarchy for all.
He's come too far to really stop now.
But then the Flood infect Truth, and the Gravemind briefly releases Truth because Arbiter wants to get his revenge on a prophet, not a puppet.
I am Truth, the voice of the Covenant. Arbiter brings him in closer and says, "That's why you must be silent." And boom, just perfect.
I don't know what's more cathartic. That cutscene of seeing Arbiter finally kill Truth or destroying 343 ourselves.
I like the one with Arbiter killing Truth. I think that was a great, like, just close to his, like, story.
Yeah, I think it is fitting that Arbiter was the one to kill Truth off and not Chief, because the Prophets just completely fucked over the elites in Halo 2. Truth was Arbiter's villain to defeat at the end of it.
Again, goes back into what I said before with what you said with him representing the elites. Remember when we said it's always great when a character can represent an idea for a large group of people? To me, that was the fall of the Covenant right there, because this is pretty much the last one where the Covenant are really a big factor.
That was the Covenant, the elite specifically, finally freeing themselves from the shackles of the Prophets, who had more or less enslaved or, I guess, brainwashed via propaganda to the rest of the Covenant about the great journey and everything.
Yeah, it was kind of like, it's not really a surprise as the player.
It's very fitting that Arbiter is the one to free his people once and for all from the Prophet's lies. But no time for that, because immediately after Truth dies, Gravemind is like,
Oh, yeah.
bitch, you thought. And then the Flood start closing in on Chief and Arbiter.
Yeah, you gotta finish assimilating everything.
And boy, are there a lot of Flood here. I will tell you this much, if I was alone on this mission, I don't think I could have gone through it as quick as we did.
Right. But now it's time to return to High Charity and rescue Cortana. And I gotta say, High Charity has definitely seen better days. Gentrification has not been kind to High Charity since the Flood took over.
All these spores brought down the real estate value.
It has just turned into a disgusting hive of Flood. It's even when Chief lands in High Charity, he looks down at his boot and it's covered in Flood slime, and yeah, it's pretty gross. I don't know which is worse, this level, Cortana, or from Halo Combat Evolved, the library.
I want to say the library just because, like, it took me 3 freaking days to finish that damn level. I was so frustrated at how many times I died from it.
I swear, the first time I played Combat Evolved, I got through the library fairly quickly. I don't remember having much trouble with it. But when we played it again for our episode, I'm just like, I don't remember this level being this difficult. I was on the same difficulty, normal, but yeah. Another thing that we forgot to bring up that Halo 3 introduced is miniguns and turrets. You can detach turrets and use them as weapons. Like, you can detach a Earth minigun or a Covenant one.
I am heavy weapons guy.
Those are so satisfying too, to just rip off the turret. Just that animation bit too.
Chief's just like, this is mine now.
Not to mention going through all the trash mobs.
And the reason why we bring it up is because
The flamethrower.
Yes, you get the flamethrower. Very effective against the Covenant. I mean, not Covenant, the Flood.
I mean, I imagine it would be very effective against the Covenant, but...
Yes.
Controversial opinion. I feel like the flamethrower is very effective against whatever you use it as. I know that's controversial.
We are going up against xenomorphs from Aliens here. Flamethrower, burn everything down, light them up.
Memorial Day, bitches.
But then, finally, at the end of it, having to endure the Gravemind's mental taunts and Cortana's dying, well, not dying, but becoming increasingly incoherent and corrupt lines, we finally find her, all by her lonesome, in the middle of this flood hive. And I really enjoyed this cutscene. It's short, and it's not anything like super groundbreaking, but for what it is, it's Chief finally reuniting with Cortana, and it's a really sweet little heart-to-heart between them. They repeat the lines, you know me, and I do know how to pick them and all that, and it's just really touching. There's plenty of callbacks to Combat Evolved. Like, the very next chapter, you're literally going back to the first Halo ring as it's being rebuilt.
I am a sucker for those kind of moments. They are very nice.
I just really like it. I think it's touching enough. It's not super emotional. This is still a hoo-ha, gotta grind those flood kind of game at the end of it all. But yeah, I just think this is a nice little moment between these two characters.
Mm-hmm.
Chief does have a little bit of a funny. He's like, well, I thought I'd shoot my way out, mix it up a little bit. Just a cheeky little. I gotta say, Chief is definitely a little bit more snarky in this game. It's not like super over the top, but compared to the first two games, he's a bit more of a wise guy in this game.
I think he's opening up more.
Yeah, like, throughout the games, you can kind of notice him developing more and more into, like, an actual personality and stuff like that.
Right, he is a bit more talkative in this game. The first game, he was pretty quiet throughout most of Combat Evolved. Halo 2, he was a bit more talkative, but for this game, I think it's because Cortana's no longer around to really carry the conversation for him, so Chief had to confront his worst foe yet, socialization.
Oh, no.
You could really say that Cortana really brought out the socializing factor of Chief. Before, when he would talk in Combat Evolved, he'd just talk business. And like you said, he's now snarky boy. So, speaking of Cortana, what did you think of her in terms of, like, as a character so far in this trilogy?
I've always loved Cortana, definitely one of my favorite characters. I love her design, her personality, and when it comes to snarkiness, like we talked with,
Her
like,
design, you say?
Hey, don't read too much into that. Alright, but I mean, like, when we talk about, like, Chief being snarky, of course, we all know Cortana to always having those good, like, snarky comments and stuff like that throughout the games.
I agree with you. And really, Cortana's rubbed off on Chief, to be honest.
Oh, yeah. She's definitely, like, one of the main reasons why he's kind of opened up as much as he has, like you guys were saying.
Did you notice that Cortana's figure is now, like, kind of red to show the slight corruption that's in her programming?
Don't they later on eventually kind of call it Regency or something like that?
Something like that, I believe. That's when they realize she's unstable, gotta be destroyed. But that's in the future game, I believe.
I think that's the huge, like, plot of 4 as well.
It's very sad, if you ask me, because, like, Cortana was fine until she was stuck on High Charity and mentally tortured by the Gravemind. It kind of makes you sad a little bit once you realize, like, how much of a corruption it is, but I do like how... So when we were playing through and we were seeing those visions and how it was getting more and more kind of, like, crap, like she is going to the dark side type thing, I felt a sigh of relief. Even though I knew where it would lead, I felt like, oh, Cortana's like fine, you know, like, because once we see her, she's like back to her snarky self again.
I remember going through that game the first time and just always being worried that when we do get to her, she's just going to be this like corrupted shell of what she once was. I originally thought that was going to be the death of Cortana.
She's very resilient.
Oh yeah.
Speaking of resiliency, even though she lasted as long as she did with the grave mine, I feel once the grave mine corrupted her, she definitely was a pawn in his schemes.
Do you guys think it's a bit of a missed opportunity that we don't see the grave mine in person again?
Maybe not that exact like body again for it, but maybe something new because it's in a different area, like a new horrifying monstrosity.
Like a big core or something like that.
I mean, when you think about it, what the grave mine is, it is the hive mind of the flood. The grave mind is always present wherever there's flood. The weird worm thing, that was just essentially a sock puppet of the grave mind. That was a more direct mouth of Sauron type of thing going on. So that's not literally what the grave mind was, but I just think it is a bit disappointing that we don't see the grave mind in that form again, because I think that would have just fully tied it all together. I think there was a boss fight planned for the grave mind, but it was ultimately cut because it wasn't really working technically wise.
Yeah, and like you have like the warhog, like I can imagine now the warhog music happening as you're like shooting this thing down, or your scorpion tank. Yeah.
The developers really wanted to give you a chance to get your time with the Scorpion tank in this game. There's a lot of segments where you can pilot a Scorpion and just go to town on everything.
I can think of like 4 moments that like they actually gave us the tanks, like being like, here, take it.
I mean, when we were riding around on those ATVs around the Scarabs and we just kept getting run over by our own teammates.
Can you imagine how many times that the AI has shot us?
Taking down Scarabs is just so cool. It really is a mini boss fight. You gotta destroy the limbs and then you gotta board it and then take it down from the inside. It's just really cool and thrilling.
Oh yeah, and I wish more games did fights like that where you have these really cool, interesting ways where you gotta take down these enemies. That's why I've always liked the Hunters so much, because they were so different from everything else you fought.
Like, speaking of a game that's probably like that, I'm guessing Shadow of Colossus is probably something you would like.
Oh yeah, I love that game.
I was just about to bring Shadow of the Colossus up. The original God of War is like that as well, although that was more spectacle, I guess. You know, the type of, you gotta approach this enemy at all angles. It is a full-on sequence just to take down this one enemy.
I do like that line, though. It's like, yes, now everything's where it should be.
Chief and Cortana back together again, and we are going back down to the original Halo ring, which is being restored on the Ark. We've already mentioned this before, but to briefly go through it, they get into the control room. It's the exact same layout from Combat Evolved, the control room. It's just been updated for 3's engine, and Johnson's like, let me go out with a bang, and he certainly does that. You destroy the Ark, and the galaxy is saved. Quick side note, but when Master Chief sees the hologram of the Milky Way galaxy and he's like, that's our galaxy, I just thought in that moment, man, it'd be so cool to watch like an astronomy documentary narrated by Steve Downes in his Chief voice. I'd watch that.
That would be interesting, to be honest, like a little 30-minute special.
Or maybe if they actually came out with a TV series that was actually focused around the games.
Yeah, like a deep world-building side series. I just think Steve Downes' Chief's voice is just very ASMR-like. I could fall asleep to Chief talking.
Laying in bed, just listening to Chief talk about how to fix up your car.
2006 Nissan Murano.
This is how you change a tire on a Ford F-150. Have Steve Downes and David Hayter ever interacted with each other? Because I want to hear a conversation between... I think the ultimate gamer ASMR conversation is Master Chief and Solid Snake just having a chat.
Oh, yeah.
I guess now that the ring is being blown up, it's time to get out of here, right?
Once again, in another callback to Combat Evolved, you have to escape the Ark by driving a Warthog through the exploding structure to get to a UNSC frigate. I know, like, it's because, we can't get too close without risking the ship, but I'm like, this would be so much easier if the ship would come to us and pick us up rather than us driving through all these obstacles in order to get to it.
Do you want a cinematic ending or not?
Yeah, I mean, that whole situation too, going through that is really fun, and I felt like a lot of it tends to feel very cinematic, especially with everything falling apart around you.
Really huge climactic climax, but it looks like Chief and Cortana don't make it. The ship splits in two, and Chief gets separated from Arbiter. Arbiter makes it back to Earth, and he's part of the memorial service with Admiral Hood. This is another, like, very bittersweet send-off to the trilogy up to this point, this memorial to everyone who died in the war.
I remember Private Andrew right there at the bottom left corner.
Hood is like, it's a damn shame Chief is dead, and Arbiter just says, were it so easy.
If only. Didn't they also during that point talk about how like that the area was gonna be like stay untouched and is this gonna be this memorial? I feel like they mentioned something like that.
Right. It's by Mount Kilimanjaro, which is where the Kenya chapters took place in the beginning of the game. So it's gonna forever remain a giant war memorial. I did kind of note that they just scratched John 117 onto the memorial plaque statue thing, and I get it, you know, there's not really a whole lot of resources to make a proper memorial, but I'm like, you could have honored Chief a bit more than just some graffiti etched onto the side here. It's a nice touch, don't get me wrong, but I'm like, you don't have a photo of him or anything?
Yeah, there's just also certain characters I feel like should get like their own memorials because of how major of a part they played.
Who could forget Arbiter Jr.? He was there the whole time.
See this photo?
There's just a giant statue of Johnson, and on his plaque it says he knew what the ladies liked.
Oh, dude, that would be epic.
I'm pretty sure Miranda Keys, like, there's a big photo of her, which is respectable, you know, she deserves it. At least I'm pretty sure. I might be misremembering that.
No, I think she had one of the bigger pictures. I mean, she was definitely the commander.
But then, cut to the remains of the frigate. I think it's called, what is the name of the ship? It's
Forward
called...
Unto Dawn or something like that.
That's it, Forward Unto Dawn. Really cool name. I really like the ship names in Halo. They just have such a poetic symbolism to them.
Like Pillar of Autumn.
That and their designs.
They're shaped like guns.
Yeah.
They're giant guns.
Giant guns.
Which is fairly phallic when you get down to it. What is this symbolizing?
Yeah, especially the Covenant ships. They're very phallic.
If you don't have enough gun, get bigger gun.
But yeah, Chief and Cortana, they're left behind on the ship. Chief is putting himself back into cryosleep. Cortana puts out a signal for someone to come rescue them, but she does make the disclaimer that it'll probably be years before anyone rescues us way out here. Because they're on the edge of the galaxy. The Ark was outside the Milky Way, I'm pretty sure. Chief just says, "Wake me when you need me." Puts himself to cryosleep, and that's where it concludes.
Speaking about like things taking years and everything like that, cryosleep. Imagine being those soldiers though. If you're going out in deep space combat, you may never see your family again. Not simply because you may die, but they might die of old age before you ever see them again.
Well, that's what happens in Aliens with Ripley. She wakes up like 80 years later from cryosleep, and her daughter, who was like a kid when she left, grew old and passed away in that time.
Yeah, it's just such a sad thought for that kind of thing to be that could happen.
And in all that time, they couldn't have gotten a higher resolution photo of her daughter. I know it was the 80s,
My
but
40 pixel evolution.
They could have still taken like something from like the highest end like cameras they could have done with the studio or something like that.
I mean, 70s aesthetic is Aliens' whole thing. Like, computers have not progressed at all in that universe since the 70s. Everything is still black and green text, which I personally enjoy. It just adds to that whole look to it, but it is funny to think about. But yeah, so what were your guys' thoughts on Halo 3 overall as a game?
I loved the game. It was so fun to play, especially again with you guys. Just the whole structure of the game, the scenery was absolutely beautiful. The music, just the whole thing with the music, so much epic battle music just playing, or just like when you're just going through stuff, it's great.
Yeah, when the rebuilt Halo ring rises from the water and that classic theme plays, it gets me every time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Halo 3, it is a really solid send-off to the first two games. It builds on everything that they set up, refines it, and concludes it. It sticks the landing. And unfortunately, though, the series did not end here. And while I am glad that we got Halo Reach out of it, the Halo series since Bungie has not been great. I mean, I'm a defender of 4. I think Halo 4 is a little overcriticized. It's not a perfect game. I certainly understand why people dislike Halo 4.
Why couldn't I fight the boss in there, the Didact? That's the big problem that I
Yeah,
have.
but what I liked about it though is the fact that we get to do like more stuff with the whole idea of the Forerunner, where most of the throughout the other games is just stuff we hear about them. and we see some of their technologies or whatever, but we don't really get to interact with them.
Halo 4 has questionable decisions. I just think it's not as bad as people remember it to be. I have not played Halo 5 myself, but everything I've heard about 5, it is not great. Did you guys ever play Halo Wars, the RTS spinoff?
Yeah, a little bit.
A long time ago.
I think I remember playing it at my cousin's house years ago, but other than that, I have no recollection. But it looks cool. I mean, I enjoy RTS games. I think those are really fun. If they want war, we'll give them war.
Oh, Halo Wars 2 gave us such a good villain.
For Halo 3, it did get a prequel expansion in 2009, Halo ODST.
Yeah, and that was in New Mombasa for Halo 2.
Followed a group of ODST soldiers just running around the city trying to survive, and I really like that setup. It felt almost noir-like in that it's constantly raining in the city, there's Covenant everywhere, you're trying to piece together what happened to your squad. It's a really cool prequel.
All you're missing is a trench coat and a hat.
Can you imagine a little hat on top of the ODST as he's walking around?
Of all the planets in all the galaxy, they had to walk into mine.
Oh, I was going to bring up the fact of how the sales of this real quick.
Yeah, Halo 3 sold extremely well. It was one of the highest selling games of that year, I'm pretty sure.
Oh yeah, and also, it set a record for the highest sold game within 24 hours.
Very impressive.
The hype for Halo 3 was unreal. This was Halo at its peak in popularity. I would argue Reach carried on the hype, but I think by the time Reach came out, like I said, I think Call of Duty was starting to chip away at Halo's popularity at that point, but even still.
It is absolutely insane, and within I think it said 12 days, it had sold over 3 million copies.
I remember seeing so much hype for Halo 3 back in the day. This was the game that made me think, man, I wish I had an Xbox 360.
I had one.
Instead, on PS3, all we had was Resistance, which, to be fair, I really enjoyed Resistance. I think it's an underrated series. Please, Insomniac or someone, please, for the love of God, bring back Resistance. I'm begging you.
Sadly, Chase, I feel your pleas are down to the void.
As for Halo, the current game, Halo Infinite, it is a hot mess right now, to put it lightly.
Apparently there's some weird grapple hook mechanic in it too now.
Oh, here I go swinging again.
I only played it very briefly when it first launched, and I was like, okay, this is solid, and then I never went back to it. So I don't know if you guys have any more experience with Infinite.
I've only seen people play it, and I don't like what I've seen of it.
Every little bit of information that comes out of Halo Infinite, I feel like that one cat meme looking over the snow. I'm just like, the fuck they doing over there? Halo is just in such a weird place right now. It's still a very recognizable series, but the last several games have just not been well received. And then of course there was the whole TV series on Paramount Plus. Did you guys ever watch that?
Little bit, like a scene or two.
My thing with it, I enjoy it, but not for being a Halo fan.
I think I watched the first couple episodes, but that was it. I think it's a good enough series on its own, but when you put the Halo IP on it, I'm like, this just ain't it, Chief. Master Cheeks.
I'm glad that we did cover Halo 3, personally. It was a nostalgia trip for me.
Yeah, I don't know where I would rank Halo 3. Personally, I think Reach will always be my favorite Halo. I think Halo 3, it sticks the landing. It does everything it had to conclude the trilogy. Combat Evolved, I'll always have a nostalgic soft spot for. Halo 2, I used to be pretty meh on Halo 2. I didn't dislike it. I just didn't really overly love it. But when we recently replayed it for our episode on it, I was vibing with it. And as for 3, I think 3 might be my favorite of the Master Chief saga at the very least. I don't know how many more Halo games we're going to cover. We're at least going to do Reach. We will definitely cover Reach in a future episode.
Yes, that's for sure.
After that, though, I mean, I wouldn't say no to Halo 4, but that's up to you guys.
If we don't decide to do it ourselves, let's say a fan base gets high enough up and they decide to, start asking for certain things, and maybe if we get enough, people wanting that, then sure. But on that, I don't really care about doing that too much. It's whatever. Maybe 4 at the most. 4 would be the furthest I'd really be wanting to push it.
I have little interest in 5 or Infinite, so yeah, I'd be willing to do 4. It's just a ways down the line if we ever do.
My only thing with saying not to is that I don't feel like we're gonna have enough heart to put into that.
We'll cross the bridge when we get there. Halo, to me, is very much a product of the 2000s from an aesthetic and idea standpoint. I just think Halo Halo, when you compare it to other contemporary sci-fi of its time, Babylon 5, the Battlestar Galactica remake, it very much fits within its era. Visually, plot-wise, premise-wise, it is very much a late 90s, 2000s sci-fi, and I really like it for that. It is of its time. It is very influenced by the politics of the era. Not as prominent as other FPS games, COD, were at the time of the Iraq and Afghanistan wars that were very much at the forefront of America's minds in the 2000s. But I do think Halo 3 and to an extent 2, they just encapsulate that mindset. I mean, Halo 2 had Breaking Benjamin music. It is of the 2000s.
I wish I was allowed to play it at the time. I had an Xbox, but I was not allowed to play.
I remember knowing this one kid who convinced his religious parents to buy Halo for him because he was able to convince them that it taught Christian values because of all the Christian symbolism in the games. I mean, he's not wrong. What about the multiplayer? We haven't really talked about Halo multiplayer in any of our episodes on it, and I think that's because I never really played the multiplayer in its heyday, as mentioned. On the Master Chief Collection, you can play multiplayer, and I've dabbled in it. I just feel like it's not the same.
Yeah, like, really, the only multiplayer I really played of Halo outside of the campaign or playing against a couple of my friends in some private matches was really mostly from Reach.
Okay, well, I will say Halo 3, in terms of individuality, there was a little bit more. Like, for example, there was this samurai skin that was super popular. Everybody who had that, I feel like, was such a tryhard or just happened to be on their big brother's account. It was one of the two. It was very fun. I actually enjoyed Halo 3 multiplayer, even though I didn't play like a lot of it when I was younger, but when the Master Chief Collection came out, I wanted to jump back in because I did enjoy it for what I did. It still had that charm. I'm kind of sad we passed Halo 3 now.
But yeah, that is the Master Chief saga. Master Chief, one of the most recognizable gaming characters, alongside Cortana, I would argue. Yeah, when you get down to it, he is a bit of the generic soldier type. He doesn't really question his orders. He's very stoic, doesn't have a whole lot of personality. He's not a total, he's not a complete empty slate. He's not a silent protagonist. He does have something to him. While I wouldn't necessarily say Master Chief is one of the best video game protagonists out there, I will say he is definitely one of the most memorable ones. I can't look at an ATV helmet without thinking of Master Chief.
Didn't they have a skin for Super Smash Bros. For Master Chief?
No, that was Doomslayer.
Okay, well then it was a mod, but even people will make mods of skins for the Miis, and it's just that's how you'll get Master Chief into Smash.
Halo, it just has so much recognizable imagery and iconography. Not just Master Chief and Cortana, but the Covenant, the Energy Sword, skybox of the Halo ring stretching off into the sky, way off into the distance, and then looping back around. The music, too. When you hear that, or the da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da.
Yeah, guys in the bathroom.
It has left its mark on gaming, and whatever state the series is in, whatever it is going forward in the future, Halo will always define the 2000s 360 generation.
All right, I think that wraps it up, gentlemen. What do you say?
I don't know. I think we've covered just about anything I'd have to say.
Yeah, I think much like Chief, wake us when you need us.
All right, well, I have been your host, Garrett, and thank you so much for listening. Chase, why don't you tell them what they can do with our email?
Well, if you want to get into contact with us, you can send us an email at backwardscompatiblepod@gmail.com. Or if you'd like, you could leave us a review on your podcast listening platform of choice. Thank you all for listening.
I've been your host, Garrett.
I've been your other host, Chase.
And I've been the third, Justin.
Wait, fuck. We already did that one.
Oh,
okay,
darn.
guys, T-pose.
T-pose. This is so shit.